Welcome to the Therapist HQ, your weekly pep talk for private practice pros. Let's dive in.
Hello, and welcome back to the Therapist HQ podcast. My name is Alicia Murray, and as always, I am so glad that you're here, so glad that you're spending this time with me, and I am really excited for today's topic because it's something that, while is definitely a big part of my lore, I don't think I give enough time and energy into talking about. And this is how I knew it was time to leave my agency job. I also think this is something that so many folks struggle with as far as how do I know it's the right time? Am I crazy for feeling this way in my agency job? Am I building my practice while in my agency job, or am I jumping in? So before I get ahead of myself, just buckle up and know that that is what we're going to be talking about today. Brief little catch up, as always. I would like to say 60% healed from surgery. We are actively working on it. I am about 2.5 weeks out post-op, and in true motherhood fashion, both of my kids got the stomach bug when I was 8 days post-op. And so, nothing like rock bottom to really bring you back to the top. Am I right? So after we got through that, it was really smooth sailing from there. So it's been about maybe 3 or 4 days since that made its way through our home, and I'm feeling good. I'm so glad to be back at work, and I'm so glad for, just all of these things that I have cooking up for all of you. Anywho's, back to today. So like I said, this topic today, when I'm thinking about who am I talking to and who is this really for, I really think that this topic is for therapists who are miserable in agency or community mental health work and are wondering if private practice is the right answer. Therapists who maybe are already building on the side and wondering when to make that leap, or anyone really who has ever talked themselves out of a big move because it felt too risky. So to start a little bit at the beginning, well, I guess this is the middle of my story, because after grad school and my pre-licensure days and working for about 1.5 years at a outpatient substance use clinic, I finally landed what I always thought was my dream job, and that is at the VA. So a little bit about where this thought came from for me for this dream job material. So when I was going to grad school, I did a interdisciplinary certificate, I guess is what they call it, basically a specialty in trauma studies. And I really wanted to work with veterans. I come from the generation of seeing a lot of my friends and older kids in our school that were going off to the military in droves because of everything post 9/11. And I saw them come back, and I saw them have a really hard time reintegrating back into just our community and into their daily life, and just, really acknowledging the changes that were going on with them. And so working with this population was always something that I was really interested in doing and wanting to really make a difference in there. And that also later in my career became coupled with the benefits that I think so many talk about when it comes to working at the VA, which is certainly higher pay compared to what maybe other agency or community mental health positions are able to give you, a pension, which, spoiler alert, is not what it used to be, and health insurance, which, another spoiler alert, wasn't even as good as what I had at my other agency job. So that is really what drew me to this conclusion of the VA is my dream job. The VA is my dream job. I am truly going to school and working so that I can get this dream job at the VA. And through a couple open positions, and also having a friend and a colleague who worked in a sister department to where I was applying, and she was able to kind of push my resume to the top a little bit, I was able to get an interview, and I was able to get hired. Now, the red flags started very early, you guys, okay? I applied for one position, and they brought me in to interview for a different position. And I feel like now in hindsight, that is just screaming red flag. I applied for this sort of day rehab position where veterans with severe mental illness would come into the outpatient clinic, and you would do outpatient day rehab type of things with them. Therapy, different therapeutic interventions. And I was this sounds amazing. I've worked in outpatient substance use where we do these like day rehab programs. Like, this is perfect. But I was actually interviewing for a community position where I would be going out in the community to meet with veterans and doing all of the work there, whether it was at their home, at a public location, whatever the case may be. I had thought from the beginning, like, this is very precarious because the position was titled like a case management position. And I was like, oh, I am not a case manager. Like, I am not a social worker. I'm a licensed mental health therapist. I really have no social work like background in terms of like this case management piece. Like, we really didn't talk about it in grad school. I did not do it in any of my past positions or in my internship. And so already off the bat, I was like, I feel just very underprepared, I think, in terms of like, how do I case manage somebody? Like, I can do therapy with them and I can do a wider range of therapeutic interventions with them, but I'm not quite sure how I'm going to case manage. My thought at the time was, I am going to get in the door, right? Like, I'm going to accept this position if it comes my way, and I am going to do the absolute best I can in this position, and then I'll just move. I'll just transfer, right? And so very early on in getting hired, I honestly want to say it was like my first and second week there where truly it was just shadowing. And I actually want to say it was actually my very, very first day shadowing. I was guffawed, you guys. Okay, like, this was a position. I give people so much credit that do these community positions for a long time. But this position was not for me. I was grossly undertrained. Feel like I can say now, like, I was underqualified for this position. I did not know anything about safety in terms of working in the community. I didn't know enough about working with severe mental health, such as a lot of schizophrenia, schizoaffective. I just hadn't worked with that population a lot, and I wasn't provided any training or opportunities for additional training. Like I said, no training in terms of like case management and what that was really expected of me. And so I felt like off the bat, I was really starting at like such a deficit of like, oh my gosh, I'm in all of these strange environments with people that I don't know, and I'm not really able to use any of like my therapeutic skills that I've worked so hard on honing in on the last, 6 years or so. And I just felt like I was floundering, truly. And so I did my 2 or 3 weeks of shadowing and training, which I'll use that term loosely. And then I had negotiated 2 weeks off because I was getting married. And so I took my 2 weeks off for my wedding. And then I took an extra week off after the wedding just to kind of recover and like get my shit back together, get my life back together after that. And so then I went back and I was like, okay, positive attitude. Like, we are going to excel at this job. Like, this is the dream job, Alicia. Like, this is exactly what you wanted. I made it actually 14 months to be exact, 'cause I got married in November and I left the following January. So over the course of the next 14 months, I every single day was just flabbergasted at the conditions that I had to work in as far as safety goes. Me and the team was really great. The leadership was very political, and I think that a lot of therapists find that even outside of the VA at any kind of hospital-based setting or even group practice settings. Like, things can become very personal and very political very quickly. And now, on top of navigating being a therapist in this clinic or in this environment, now we're also navigating, like, how do I survive in these politics and not get eaten alive and somehow also get myself ahead and create these positive working relationships in this type of environment so that I can succeed at my job and in my career and in this place that, I'm spending so much of my time. And I think that was really difficult for me because I was just not expecting that. Like, I had this vision in my head of like, this is the dream. Like, this is the place where they're supposed to treat you well. This is the place that you're supposed to be doing this really, really great and meaningful work. And I just wasn't feeling like those parts of the dream that I was holding on to so tightly were being met. And so about 6 months in, I remember I called my best friend and I said, I actually fucking hate this job. And she said, well, that's not good because she knew that this is what I'd always talked about doing. And so, we have our little baby of a crisis and then we move on to like, what are we going to do about this? And so behind the scenes, while I'm in this new job and, doing the things, I had started doing some contract work on the side to save up even more money to start my private practice. And so that brings us to the summer of 2019. And I was knee deep, head down, building my practice on the side. I would go to work super early in the morning, get out around 3 or 3:30. I would go to a yoga class. I would go home and I would work on my private practice. I would learn everything there was to learn. I would apply it all. I would get every single piece of my private practice built after those hours of working at the VA. And that was my entire summer, really. Like, I remembered like the sun shining and I am just sitting at my desk trying to get this thing set up. And I never talked about it really to anybody except for that one friend that I had at the VA because she also was going to do private practice eventually too. And she now also has a very successful private practice. And so her and I would talk about it, but I really wouldn't talk about it with anybody else because there's also this like message when you're working in community mental health or any kind of agency of like, people don't talk about these like things that they're doing on the side or these things that they're building on the side because there's this fear of like, well, are they just going to fire me? Are they going to let me go? Or are they going to think that I'm going to leave? And so I'm next on the chopping block. Like just all of these very like difficult, I think, like messaging and sort of like ideals that we can get caught up in. And so I never talked about it, but I just did it quietly on the side. And I made it through the summer. I really had the bulk of my private practice set up by the end of the fall, so Thanksgiving, Christmas time, everything was set up for me. And I think that in a weird way, the difficulties that I had at my agency job propelled my motivation even more to spend that time outside of work to build my practice. There are so many other things I would have rather been doing. We had no kids. We were newly married. Of course, I would have rather been doing tons of other things, but I had this drive from like, cannot be in this job forever. Like I actually cannot be in this job forever. Like this is truly not the place for me. I remember I would arrive to work and leave to work so anxious just about what my day would be bringing, where I was going that day, who I was seeing that day. If I was seeing a veteran who like lived in a really difficult part of town and just kind of going through like all of the safety measures in my head and worrying if leadership was going to give us a hard time about wanting to travel in pairs because these situations were so unsafe that we were putting ourselves in. And so it was highly motivating. It was highly motivating to like get the heck out. And I think it's really hard in agency work, whatever the case may be, when we're trying really hard to advocate for ourselves and there's like this political bureaucratic thing where the superiors will listen and acknowledge it, but then no change comes. And I've heard from a lot of therapists of them experiencing this as well, where it's like, I have this concern about my job. I have this concern about, how this is impacting the care that I'm providing for my clients. And I'm trying so hard to make change happen and to get leadership to get on board to make these changes with me. And nobody is helping. Like I am left here floundering. And I think that that can really weigh on a clinician. And I think that that really, really can fast track burnout in a really gnarly because at the end of the day, I think therapists come into this with such a place of wanting to provide the best possible clinical care. But then when we're put in an environment where the odds are stacked against us, like we actually can't provide the level of clinical care that we want to because of the circumstances around us that we are not in control over, it's a really, really difficult place to be, right? And I say all that to say, it's just something that I hear so often. And I just want people to know that like those who have successful private practices, a lot of them came from situations like that. Like a lot of them survived and came through situations like that. And I would be a betting woman that a lot of folks found that motivation similar to how I did to use that situation to make their situation better. I also want to acknowledge that I've heard from a lot of therapists that those situations can become so draining that therapists are left with nothing at the end of the day and really struggle to get their private practice off the ground, right? Because they're leaving this agency job that is taking everything from them. They come home, the last thing they want to do is open up a guide or a course or a workbook or a YouTube video or a to-do list or anything like that and do more of this work that like really does require like our attention and attention to detail. And I totally understand like how those therapists feel and how they came to feel that way. And I really, really try to encourage therapists to start building these things like while the energy is there. Like we don't want to get so far gone in the place that we're working that we have nothing left when we're leaving that place. And then that's how we get stuck, right? Like that's how we really get stuck and ingrained in these places that really are no good for us, for our care to the clients, for our health, for our longevity in the field, our burnout, all of those factors, right? How many clients have you lost this year because of cost? I'm not asking to make you feel bad. I'm asking because for a lot of practitioners in private practice, that number is higher than it should be. And the painful part, a lot of those clients had insurance benefits that could have made your sessions work for them. Out of network benefits sitting unused because nobody ever checked. That's the problem Mentaya was built to solve. Mentaya's benefits checker lets you verify a client's out of network coverage at intake in seconds, not days. The client sees exactly what they can get reimbursed. You stay at your full rate, and the cost conversation goes from a wall to a window. Mentaya will also submit the claims on behalf of your client for around a 5% fee, so it's a seamless system rather than just a tool that you're using. If you're in private practice and you're tired of losing clients you could keep, try Mentaya free for 30 days. Go to mentaya.com and use code TherapistHQ. That's mentaya.com and code TherapistHQ for your free trial. Mentaya, keep your rate, keep your clients. So we've obtained our dream job. We've realized it wasn't our dream job. We've started building our private practice on the side. We've gone through the whole emotional, physical, logistical, mental roller coaster of it all. And now we're at the point where I had to make a decision of when it was time to leave. I will say, from summer to fall, I really had no plan on execution of how I was going to leave, what that transition was going to look like. I was simply taking it day by day. And I really was looking at things as like, I just have to get through X. So like, I just have to get through the summer and build this practice. I just have to get through the fall and put things in motion. I just have to get through the holidays and then get my private practice live and launched. And then I just have to get my first client and then I have to get my second client, right? So I had this mentality that I feel like kept me very short-sighted, but also helped to make things not feel overwhelming for me personally because of balancing like this full-time job and my personal life and this business venture. So we made it through Thanksgiving. It's almost Christmas time, and my partner and I find out that we are pregnant with our first baby, who we had been trying for 9 months. It took 9 months, 9 or 10 months to get pregnant with our first baby. Over the moon excited. We get through the holidays. We tell all of our family. It's wonderful. It's great. We get to January. I go back to work. Actually, no, in December, when I found out I was pregnant, I was so early when I found out. Like I was like 5 weeks when I found out. And oh my gosh, I actually took my pregnancy test in the bathroom of the job that I hated because I just had such a feeling and I just like had to take the test and like had to know like at that moment. So that's funny. And so I went to my first doctor appointment. It had the confirmation, all of that good stuff, brought that back to my supervisor. And I shared, I said, hey, I really don't want anybody else to know, but I am pregnant and it was really, really hard to get pregnant. You know, I'm feeling very anxious. I'm feeling very cautious. I would like to be taken off of going into the homes that have like a large amount of cigarette smoke because we would go into some homes where our veterans like lived with roommates or lived with family or lived with others. And it was just not like a well-kept home. And there was drug use. There was a lot of cigarette use inside the home, no ventilation, the full nine, right? And I said, I would like to be taken off of the homes where there's, all of this immense amount of cigarette smoke. And my supervisor looked at me and said, well, actually, there's not really a lot of research to show that secondhand smoke can impact a pregnancy. And so I would really need documentation from your OBGYN in order to consider taking you off of those jobs. And I left that meeting and I got through my workday and I went home and I sat down with my husband and I said, so I'm going to quit my job. And I told him what happened. And I wasn't as upset as I thought I would be. I was really frustrated. Like, I was frustrated with, I was thrown into this job, unqualified, underprepared, undertrained, did the job well, had positive outcomes for the vets that I was working with. I felt like I was asking for not even a reasonable accommodation, but like a very necessary accommodation to keep myself and my baby safe. And to be met with such a false summary of research and statistics, and also just sort of like the unsupportive nature of that, I just looked at my husband and I said, yeah, I can't do this. I can't do this job while pregnant. I can't be 8 months pregnant fighting about keeping myself and this baby safe in this job. Like, it is really just not worth it to me. And I did have to call my OB and get that paper faxed over that said, hey, girly pop, she can't be around secondhand smoke because it actually is dangerous to her fetus. So I did get that faxed over because I did give a very hearty notice. I gave either a 4 or a 6 week notice, and I did all the things right. I offered to be part of the interview committee. I offered to, send out a call to some of the folks that I went to grad school with to see if they were interested in the position. And I did all of that. And as far as that transition goes logistically, because I know that folks are always so curious about the logistics and the financials of making that change. So what happened was, after I told my husband, I can't stay in this job anymore, my husband and I sat down and went through our finances with a fine-tooth comb. And we were like, this is what comes in every month without my income. So just my husband's income. And this is what goes out. And at the time, we were renting. We didn't have a house yet. We were looking, but it was just tough. It's still tough to find a house. And so our expenses were relatively low because we were renting. Like I said, we had no kids. We lived a pretty simple life. And we figured out that we could survive on just his income. But for the sake of life and expenses, I applied to go back to the substance use clinic that I was previously working at in a part-time capacity. So they had like an evening shift open up. I think it was around maybe 15 or 20 hours a week, which was still a little more than I wanted to be working, but it brought in like just enough money that it was a really great cushion for us and for me building my practice. And so in January is when I started both. I started that part-time outpatient substance use position. I left the full-time job and I started building my practice, and I filled my practice pretty quickly. I filled my practice probably in the first 2.5 months. And granted, it was only at a part-time capacity because I was still working those hours part-time at this other agency. And so that transition, I think, helped to sort of like ease the blow of, I still have this money coming in consistently. It's a lot logistically to juggle. Like, I remember it was a lot, like scheduling wise, it was a lot client wise. Like, now I'm managing this pretty full caseload, even though the job is only part-time, with my like pretty full caseload in my practice. And I do remember feeling, and I was pregnant, like I remember feeling like, oh my gosh, like this is a lot. I'm not really sure if I could do this like once the baby is here, but it was working like for now. Like, it was serving its purpose for that transition. And I would be remiss to not tell you, like, I heard it all when I said that I was quitting my federal government employee position to work for myself, like from every age, from every angle. I heard like, you're going to give up a pension, you're going to give up your health insurance, you're going to give up this like really stable pay and this great career opportunity. And of course, it did always give me pause of like, am I making the wrong decision? Like, is this really going to come back? Like, I'm about to bring a baby into this world. Like, is this going to come back and bite me? And am I going to be crawling back to the VA, like begging them to put me in like any position possible? I also want to note that like I made it a point to not burn any bridges when I left the VA. Like in the exit interviews, of course, they were asking me like about problems that like were going on in the clinic. And instead of like feeding into it and like sharing those things with them, like I played the fence. Like I sat right on that fence and gave them the like, this is a wonderful place to work. I'm so happy with the work I do here, et cetera, because I was so afraid of burning a bridge. Like I was just so afraid of never being able to come back if things happened and I needed to come back, right? And so it was hard to hear those things around me of like, you're literally crazy. Why are you doing this? But it never swayed me. Like, of course, it like gave pause. It never stopped me from continuing on this path that like my husband and I agreed on and that I did feel good about. And I still went through all the decisions. Like I still left. I still, put everything into my practice, into this part-time gig. And I obviously never looked back. And I obviously very much never needed to cross that bridge again. I could have burned it. I could have blown it up. Looking back, like what I have, like honestly, no, like it just like wasn't worth like my time. And it's not my mess to clean up. It's not my like chaos to try to fix, especially when I'm on my way out the door. And I think that a lot of therapists too get caught up in that, like wanting to fix things or like leave these agencies in a better place than where they found them. And I think sometimes it is just such a beast that not one person can take that on. Like not one person can clean up these messes that have been so systemically created. So pulling it all back together, leaving, this really stable job on paper, even though day to day it certainly did not feel stable to me, like mentally or physically. It definitely takes a particular kind of courage and certainly a particular kind of delusion in like just really believing in yourself and knowing that what you're going to do is going to work and knowing the decision you're making is the right decision for you and your family. It is not reckless. It is not irresponsible. It's really trusting yourself with everything that you have researched and everything that you've experienced and sort of putting those things together and figuring out like who you are and what you need. And if anyone right now is sitting in an agency job and feeling that pull, I hope that you could just take this as like a little bit of permission to take that feeling seriously. Obviously, you don't have to quit today. Like, please don't quit today. Have a plan, have a really solid plan, but also start that plan before it becomes too late. Like, start that building and start that foresight before you become so run down in the position that you're in now that you have nothing left to give to yourself, because that I think is a really, really hard place to crawl out of. It is not impossible, but it is very difficult. And if anything in this episode has resonated for anybody today that has been thinking about private practice or you're looking to grow your private practice, there are a couple things that I will link in the show notes. I have created a private practice launch kit, which is everything you need from the ground up to create your practice. This is business creation, form, script, marketing. Everything is step by step. And it's actually getting a really, really beautiful makeover. So even if you purchase it today, you will have access to the new version of it, which will be coming out next month. And this is really everything that I wish that I had when starting my private practice. If you're looking for some growth in your private practice, the HQ community is definitely the place for you to be. This is for therapists in private practice who want ongoing support and growth in their practice. And so it is really your marketing sidekick. We have weekly social media prompts, a library of expert trainings, and a custom GPT sidekick who makes admin and marketing a breeze for you. And like I said, both of those things will be linked in the show notes. Now, to wrap up this episode with my favorite little feature of this podcast, which is Therapist in the Threads, which is where I go into Reddit and I find a thread that has to do with things that we talked about today. We read through it, we talk about it, and we see what other therapists on the internet have to say, because don't we all love to hear what other therapists on the internet have to say? So this particular post comes from r/therapist. It's titled, "Need Words of Encouragement to Leave Agency Job and Pursue My Private Practice More." Hello all. I need some words of encouragement about leaving my community mental health agency job that I've been at since March of 2023. Some of my clients I've been working with for over 2 years, and I'm really worried about telling them I'm leaving the agency. But I got my LCSW in 2024, and since that time, I've started a tiny private practice with about 5 clients who are really great fits for me. I am feeling really burnt to a crisp with agency work because a lot of my clients are not my ideal client, and they often need slots that are outside my normal business hours. Despite feeling like I've paid my dues with working late, I still find myself bending to their requests for evening appointments. I know that's a people-pleasing part of me, and I'm doing a lot of personal work to heal that right now and maintain boundaries. It's just not easy. Anyway, I'm looking for words of encouragement to leave this agency job and pursue my private practice more full throttle. I also work as an OBGYN social worker 3 days a week, and I want to do private practice the other 2 days. My end goal is to grow the private practice because I want to start a family in the next few years, and I love the flexibility private practice can provide. My OBGYN job provides me the stable pay of a W-2. Thank you for reading this. This response that comes through, this is the only response I'm going to read to this because it is so perfect. This user comments, "When you talk about ideal clients, normal hours, and bending, you're already charting the difference between the territory you want and the one you've outgrown. The agency has shaped you, but now it traps you in patterns that drain your capacity to become more. This isn't about courage, it's about movement. Dear colleague, keep your W-2 anchor, grow your practice on your terms, and release the territory that no longer sustains you. That is not abandonment. It's preserving your ability to serve. We are our most important tool, and we have the responsibility to maintain ourselves at our best." How beautiful is that? So, dear listener, if you are also on the fence about making the transition or moving into private practice or starting that private practice, please feel free to comment below or send me a message on Instagram or shoot me an email. I am always happy. My inbox is always open, and I'm always happy to chat. That is all for today. As always, thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I'm so glad that you're here, and I will see you next week.